Okay, good evening. Um, so we are going to start our second chapter for the semester, and this is chapter 11. Okay, chapter 11. And again, we're going to go, as we always do, to the section in our textbook and go over what I consider to be the most important areas. In other words, you should go through all of the material in your textbook for chapter 11, but I'm going to go to what I think is most important in terms of focusing on for preparing you for the upcoming homework and then the chapter 11 test in a few weeks. So this chapter deals with el deporte, sports, y el bienestar, and well-being, like health. And so we want to get ourselves familiar with the vocabulary surrounding these areas because that's going to be on your homework and on your test. Again, a lot of these phrases and words and the vocabulary surrounding these areas you may already be familiar with, okay? But we'll take a look at this. So the first section that we're going to look at is the communication section. As you know, each chapter is divided up into communication, where they'll give you specific language used in whatever that chapter is on. So they've chosen some areas of vocabulary or some phraseology that they'd like us to be familiar with. It's very simple, and we'll go over that. That's in comunicación. That has to do with sports or well-being. Then we're going to jump to vocabulary. Again, a lot of the sports and well-being vocabulary you've probably had before. And then finally, we'll look at estructura, the grammar that they want us to know. Okay, so in terms of comunicación, if we would go to page 352, I like to go right to the uh, box there. And what they want us to know is how to wish somebody luck. Okay, the word for luck, of course, is suerte. So let's see. And they start this section off with people from different countries wishing one another luck. I encourage you to look through all of this. And now let's just get, though, to the meat of this section. And so to wish someone good luck in Spanish, you can use one of these expressions. And again, this box is at the beginning of page 352. So again, you may already know this or most of this, but just I'll go over it quickly because there will be some questions on the exam dealing with this and in your homework as well. So you can tell somebody good luck, buena suerte. Suerte, by the way, is feminine, or you could just say suerte or suerte con todo. You could say mucha suerte. All right. Depending upon whom you're speaking to, if you're familiar with somebody and you use the to form, you could say te deseo, yo te deseo mucha suerte, or le deseo if it's you're using the formal you, or les deseo if you're using the plural formal you. Okay. Again, here's some other expressions. Somebody's in a race, maybe as they're going by, you might say, ánimo, ánimo, keep your spirits up, give it all you got. Or adelante, adelante, or sí, se puede. Yes, it can be done, you can do it. And then here's some expressions they give us that you might want to say to somebody when you're saying goodbye to them again. Que te vaya bien, informal to form, or que le vaya bien, singular formal, or que les vaya bien. All right. Have a good day, que tengas un buen día, que tengas una buena noche, que tengas un buen fin de semana. This is very basic stuff, but I just wanted to point this out. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else here? I think that's it. Okay. Now let's go to vocabulario. And again, we're dealing with sports and bienestar, well-being. A lot of the sports, of course, vocabulary you should know by now. But let's take a look. So it says here, and um, in vocabulary, we're on page 354, los deportes, sports, y ¿Cómo mantenerse en forma? Mantenerse en forma means to stay in shape. And indeed, they may ask you on your exam, ¿Cómo te mantienes en forma? How do you stay in shape? So you might want to talk about sports you play or exercises that you do or your routine. So again, a lot of this vocabulary we had in Spanish 101, 102. So but we'll look at it very quickly. So mantenerse en forma, to stay in shape, or mantenerse en buena salud. How do you stay in such good health? And that might be tu dieta. Maybe you're a vegan and you're very careful with what you eat. You eat organic, etc., etc. So just to give you some ideas, because these will be some of the themes on the homework and certainly on the exam. And on the exam, of course, you may have to read a passage or listen to somebody talk. So it's good to be familiar with this vocabulary. Okay, so let's just take a quick look through here. Uh, they talk a little bit about mantenerse en forma. And then here's some activities. Again, you should know these if you're familiar with them. To ride a bike is andar en bicicleta. You can say ir en bicicleta. Andar means to go about, or ir just to go en bicicleta. Montar en bicicleta. If you like mountain climbing, I mean, my son likes it. It's hacer alpinismo. Um, uh, uh, Jugar, now various sports. We all know the verb jugar, voleibol. And again, you can say jugar al voleibol or just jugar voleibol. It's much more accepted now in just common everyday Spanish. You don't have to use the al after jugar, but you should be aware of it. But here your book doesn't. I don't when I speak Spanish, but again, it depends on you. Andar en patineta, skateboarding, jugar béisbol, to lift weights, levantar pesas. Again, for those of you who have, it's been a while since maybe you've had Spanish 101, I think is where we have a lot of this vocabulary. There's some of the language. El atletismo, okay. Boxear, to box, maybe you do that to keep in shape. Maybe you jugar fútbol americano, patinar, to skate, patinar sobre hielo, to ice skate, esquiar, jugar tenis, surfear. So here's different activities, and there's more listed here. I would invite you to go through this. And now, what sorts of things do you use when you're engaged in a sport? Well, you need what actual object or thing might you need for ciclismo, for cycling? You're going to need a bicicleta. Okay. If you're going to go biking, you also may, or you're playing football, American style football, you're going to need el casco, a helmet. Okay. If you're playing tennis, right, your pickleball sort of thing, you need a raqueta. Okay, patines, to patinar, to skate. La patineta is a skateboard. You're going to need a ball in many sports. La pelota. Weights, las pesas. Sneakers, los tenis. If you nadar, you're going to need a piscina. Okay, so I'm just reviewing some of this vocabulary and uh, in the vocabulary section, read through these sections uh, and just familiarize yourself with the vocabulary and look at the questions because you're going to hear some things like this in your homework and on your exam. And it would be good just to go through and look at some of the questions and things that they ask you. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay. Then after los deportes, okay, there's a section on here, la salud y el bienestar. Okay, more on health. Okay, and they're going to be asking you questions. ¿Cómo te mantienes de cómo te mantienes en buena salud or cómo te mantienes en forma. And you should be able to talk about some of these things. And so on page 358 and 359, there's a section on la salud y el bienestar. Again, a little more vocabulary. Let's look at page 359. Um, just quickly, there's some vocabulary. Uh, you know, um, here we have an enfermera, and what is she doing? She's going to measure the height, the altura. The verb to measure is medir, okay? And it's a stem changer. La enfermera mide, okay, al muchacho. She's measuring him. Um, to gain weight is subir de peso. To lose weight is bajar de peso. Okay. Susana levanta pesas. And so ella bueno, she's, in this case, it says sube de peso. She's maybe because she's getting more muscular, that's denser, she's going to weigh more. And Felipe is trying to stop eating, and so he'll baja, el baja de peso. He's losing weight. Again, basic vocabulary that we learned back in 101 to get sick, enfermarse, to become better, mejorarse. But let's move on here. Here's a little section in talking about illness. And again, this is just good to know. If you're going to be working in the health field, or just if you need to speak Spanish, and if you're not feeling well, here's some great vocabulary to have if you're ever in a Spanish, a completely Spanish-speaking country or area, and you need to, and you may not be feeling well. So here's some great language. La enfermedad is a sickness. Your symptoms are los síntomas. I know it ends in an A, but it is masculine, los síntomas. If you have any complaints, those are quejas. The word for pain is el dolor. Okay. And then there's the verb doler, right? And in the present tense, it's a stem changer. The O goes to UE. And you use doler like we did gustar. We use the indirect object pronouns. So how would you ask somebody if their head hurts? You would say, and you're using the to form, ¿te duele la cabeza? And if it doesn't hurt you, you might say, no, me duele. No me duele mucho. It doesn't hurt me much. No, pero me duele mucho el estómago. No, but me duele mucho el estómago, but my stomach hurts. And then here, if you were asking somebody in a usted form, ¿le duelen a usted los pies? Do your feet hurt you? Sí, me duelen los pies y las piernas. So just take a look at that. And then here's some more words that you might want to know, right? We just went through a COVID epidemic, so cuarentena is quarantine. The word for fever is a fiebre. Tienes fiebre. Tener fiebre is to have a fever. La mascarilla, another good word to know. Mascarilla is a face mask. La pandemia, pandemic. La la pandemia de COVID. Sangre is blood. Tos is a cough. Virus. Okay. Um, tener alergia a, to be allergic to. All right. Tomar los datos, to get the information. What does the enfermera or the assistant normally do when you go to a doctor's office? Ella toma los datos, tus datos médicos. Or she might tomar las medidas. She might medirte. All right. Real quickly, they talk about converting kilograms to pounds and vice versa. You might want to take a look at that. We're not studying math in this class, but it is good to be aware that in most of the Spanish-speaking world, they use kilograms versus pounds. When I was younger, a long time ago, they said we were going to switch over to the metric system. We never did, but they did talk a lot about it back in the late 60s, early 70s. It never happened. But most of the world uses the metric system, as you may already know. Okay, what else? Okay, I think that does it. Look through the different exercises they do talking about symptoms, illnesses. Just take I'll look at this just so when you get to your exam and you get a reading or something, it'll just make things, or when you get to your homework, it'll make things go a little more smoothly if you're familiar with the vocabulary. Now, finally, let's go to estructuras, grammar, grammar. Okay. So on page 363, grammar starts. And what section 3 is about again, they give you some examples of what they want you to learn. And then on the next page, on page 364, is the section Actividades Analíticas. In there, they explain to you what they want you to know, what they want you to take away from this lesson. So let's just take a look at this section. And so they want you to be able to use object pronouns. Okay. They want you to use object pronouns with the present perfect tense. So first of all, we have to remember what is the present perfect tense. We just learned it last semester, and you could look it up in the book and review it if you need to. We have the same tense in English. The present perfect tense is the verb to have is conjugated in the present tense, and then we get the past participle of whatever verb we're trying to express. So, for example, with the verb to eat, if I want to use it in the present perfect tense, I have to conjugate the verb to have, and then I get my past participle. So I would say the verb to eat would be, and if I use it with I have eaten. Okay, with the verb to see, I have seen. What if I use the subject pronoun they? Um, they have walked. Okay. What about to or you? You have finished. So it's the verb to have conjugated in the present tense and then the past participle. You should know that the verb to have we're going to be using here is haber, right? Yo he, tú has, él ha, nosotros hemos, ellos han, and all of those conjugations have an H before them. Make sure you review the verb haber in the present tense. And then you have to form the past participle. So you take the stem of the verb, okay? And if it's an AR verb, you add on ado. So for tomar, or the verb to take, taken, the past participle is tom plus ado. If it's an ER-IR verb, you take the stem of the verb and you add on ido. So I have eaten would be yo he. Now eaten would be stem of the verb comer, com, plus ido. I have lived. Okay, so the past participle of live, or the word lived in Spanish would be the stem of the verb is vive plus ido, vivido, yo he vivido. So just review that. It's a very easy stem. I'm sorry, a very easy verb um, form to conjugate. Remember the past participles of some of the verbs are irregular. So I have made from hacer is yo he hecho. It's just irregular. You have seen, tú has visto. So he has said, él ha dicho. Some of those past participles are irregular, but generally they are not. So look at that. Now, they want you to be able to use what they call your object pronouns. Okay, so you want to be able to say, I see her. Okay, I uh, ate it. Okay, I'm sorry. I have seen her. Okay, I have eaten it. So you want to use the present um, perfect tense with an object pronoun. Okay, so using her, him, it, okay, them, okay. I have eaten them. And The, all right. So we all know how to form our direct object pronouns, right? If we're going to use it with a direct object pronoun, right? So what is the word for it in Spanish? So let's say we say, I have eaten the food. Now I want to use the direct object pronoun for food. I would say it. I have eaten it. So how do I get the word it? I look at the word food. Yo he comido la comida. La comida is feminine and singular. How do I say it? Is a direct object? It's la. So now how would I say that in Spanish? Well, we learned that you always place your object pronouns directly before the conjugated verb. In the present perfect tense, the only conjugated verb you have is haber. So if I want to say I have eaten it and the it is food, so my it becomes la. So I would say I have eaten it would be yo la he comido. Notice where I put the la before the verb haber. So whenever you use the present progressive tense, for our purposes, okay, you're going to put your object pronoun, whether it's la, it, which is feminine singular it, or lo, the masculine singular it, or if I mean la as her or lo as him, I'm always going to put it directly before the conjugated verb haber. So if I want to say we have eaten the dessert, dessert is masculine. So el postre. So if I want to say we have eaten it, we would say nosotros lo hemos comido. I put my object pronoun lo before the conjugated verb, which in the case of the present progressive tense is always the verb haber, and that's where you place it. So read through this section, okay? Read uh, uh, through the section. And the same thing with the indirect object pronoun. I have given it to him. So to him, if you remember your indirect object pronouns is le. So I have given it to him is yo le he dado. Yo le he dado. Whatever it is. Yo le he dado el libro. I have given him the book. Notice I put the indirect object pronoun right in front of the conjugated verb, which in the present progressive tense is always haber. And likewise, if you have a reflexive verb and they give you the example of despertarse, ella se ha despertado. Notice I put my se, my object pronoun here, a reflexive verb always goes before the verb haber. And that's it. Okay. Um, let's move on to the next section. And this is on page 368. And again, we learned this tense already. It's the present progressive tense. So they want you to be able to form the present progressive tense once again, and then use it with object pronouns. So it's really simple. And so you can go back and review how we form the present progressive tense. But the present progressive tense is just like in English. We use the verb to be, and then we add on the present participle of whatever verb we're using, the main verb we're using, whatever we want to say. So, for example, right now I would say, I am speaking. I use the verb to be, and I conjugate it in the present tense, and then I follow it with the present participle or the ing form of the verb. So I am speaking. You are listening. So the present progressive tense for would be are listening. It has two parts to it. The verb to be conjugated in the present tense, and then you have to form the present participle. Now, in Spanish, we have two verbs to be. Remember, we always use the verb estar, never ser. So, yo estoy hablando. I am speaking. Not yo soy, yo estoy. Nosotros estamos. Ellos están. Okay. Now, how do you form the present participle? Again, get the stem of the verb. If it's an AR verb, you add on ando. So I am speaking would be hablando. Yo estoy hablando. For ER and IR verbs, you add an iendo, I-E-N-T-O. So, um, uh, so you could say, I am eating. Yo estoy comiendo. All right, now, so that was just a review of what the present progressive tense is. And again, I invite you to go to page 368 and go there to actividades analíticas. They go back through the tense, and you can go to prior chapters and actually look at it, but you should remember it and how to form it. But what do they want us to do here? They want us to use the present progressive tense with an object pronoun. This is really simple stuff, but again, uh, you will always place your object pronouns before the conjugated verb for our purposes and for the purposes of your exam coming up. So you're going to put it before your conjugation of a star. It's just like what we did now with the present perfect tense. We put our object pronouns immediately before our aber conjugations. Now we're going to put it before the star conjugation. So if I want to say I am eating the dessert, now I want to say I am eating it because now I want an object pronoun. Well, how do I say it? Well, I have to look at dessert. It's el postre, so it's masculine and singular. The masculine and singular it, object pronoun in Spanish, you should all know this is lo. So I am eating it would be yo. Lo estoy comiendo. Okay, that's all there is to this. I'm giving him the book. We can use it with an indirect object pronoun, or I'm giving her the book. So I am giving would be yo estoy dando, okay? So I'm giving her the book would be yo le estoy dando el libro. I put the object here, the indirect object pronoun, before the conjugated verb, immediately before. And that's all there is. So you need to be, for both these, for, for the grammar in chapter 12, you need to know how to form the present perfect tense and the present progressive tense. And you need to be able to use it with object pronouns, whether they're direct object pronouns, lo, la, los, las, or indirect object pronouns, le or les, nos, etc., etc. And you need really to know the placement. So remember the object pronouns. When you use an object pronoun with the present progressive tense or the present perfect tense, you always put your pronouns immediately before the conjugated verb. Okay, real simple. Again, look through that section of actividades analíticas just for clarification. Okay. Finally, let's jump to page 370. And this is our last area of grammar. Okay, so we're going to go to 370. And let me see here. If I can get us there. Okay. Okay, we're going to learn now hold on. I need to jump ahead. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're now on page 370, and it's going to be the subjunctive tense. The subject, we do have a subjunctive in English. It is used, but not to the degree that it is in Spanish. Okay, and there's certain conditions where we use the subjunctive, and we're going to learn right now, first of all, how to form the tense, and then a few situations where and when we need to use it. Okay, so um, let's take a look and go right to the actividades analíticas, okay, on page 371. Let's get to the meat of it. And so they say above in para empezar, um, it shows you the present subjunctive tense. And the subjunctive is used in a wide variety of situations, and we'll learn when, but specifically, it is used to express recommendations. If somebody's advising you to do something, recommending you to do something, or they want or desire you to do something. Okay, so it's going to be, you're going to see it in a two clause sentence. I recommend that. In the second clause, you use the subjunctive, that you go to school on time. Or I advise you to leave your husband. That's the second clause you would leave would be in the subjunctive. Or I want you to um, play more sports. In that secondary clause, because I'm using a verb of want, I'll use the subjunctive. And that's what we see in Spanish all the time. Now, how do you form the subjunctive tense? So for regular verbs, okay, and we'll learn the irregular subjunctives next chapter. Right now, we just want regular verbs, and that's all we're going to deal with in chapter 12. Regular verbs. How do you form it? The subjunctive, they tell us it forms just like the regular present tense with one twist. Remember, we have AR, ER, and IR verbs. Well, if you have an AR verb, your endings won't be with an A. Your endings, your verb endings, you're going to get the stem and then put your endings on. So you get your stem like you always do, and you're going to put on E endings. It's counterintuitive. Okay. So normally I would say in the present tense, tu buscas, you are looking for something. But because it's a subjunctive, I end it with an ES ending. Que tu busques. So AR verbs will have E endings very similar to the present tense endings. So the ending for the to form will be ES, busques. The ending for el, ella will just be an E as opposed to an A. For nosotros, it's not going to be an AMOS, but an EMOS. Busquemos. And for the ellos, ustedes form, it won't be buscan, it'll be busquen again. So they're exactly like the present tense endings for AR verbs, but instead of an A, they're going to have an E in them. What about the yo form? It's going to be a stem, and then it'll have this, it'll conjugate just like the L and A form. Okay, so que yo busque, que tú busques, que él busque, que nosotros busquemos, que ellos busquen. So take a look at that. That's for AR verbs. Now, what about ER and IR verbs? Regular ER and IR verbs. How do we form the subjunctive? It's the same idea. So we know that in the present tense, AR and ER, I'm sorry, ER and IR verbs have E endings, generally speaking. They have E endings. So, tú comes, él come, nosotros comemos, ellos comen. But in the case of ER verbs, and the same for IR verbs, uh, what are the endings? Vives, they're going to be E endings. El vive. And then except for vivir, it'd be IMOS, and then ellos viven. So for ER and IR verbs, if you want the subjunctive, you don't have E endings, you're going to have A endings. So it would be tú comas, tú vivas, él coma, él viva. Okay. Nosotros comamos, okay? Que nosotros vivamos, all right? Ellos coman, and then ellos vivan. So we'll have a endings for all e, are, and I verbs. Real simple. And again, we go back to what about the yo form? The yo form in the subjunctive is exactly like the L and A. Que yo coma, que yo viva. And that's how we conjugate for regular verbs in the subjunctive tense. Now, we know, and please look through the um, actividades analíticas on page 371 and 372. They will go through this and just practice it. And there they've done it for you. I'm going to move on. Now, point 4 here is, let me see, where do I want to go? Let's go to page 372. Okay, and give me a second. Uh, okay, yeah, all right. Point 4. We want to look at point 4. When do you use the subjunctive? Because on your test and your homework, they're going to say conjugate the verb into the subjunctive. You'll all be able to do that. But then they're going to give you other exercises and they'll give you a verb and they'll say, in this sentence, are we going to use the subjunctive form of the verb or the present, just the plain present indicative form? You have to make that decision. So that you'll know what to do when you get the homework or the test problem. This is the explanation part, number 4 here. Please read through this. So you um, you use the subjunctive after verbs of volition, of desire, they say. So after recommend, remember you use a subjunctive, there'll be a first clause and then a second clause, you use a subjunctive in the second clause. So whenever your first clause is a verb of volition, and here they are, if you recommend somebody do something, the second clause will be in the subjunctive. Here's another one. If you hope for somebody or wish for somebody to do something, esperar que, the second clause is in that subjunctive. If you use the phrase ojalá, I hope, means basically I hope. The second clause is in the subjunctive. If you request somebody to do something, I request you to eat more meat or eat less meat. The secondary clause is in the subjunctive. If you say you want someone to do something, I want you to go to school on time. The second clause is in the subjunctive. If I say it's necessary, it's important that, okay, that the second clause will be in the subjunctive. In English, we're not so picky like this, but in Spanish, they are. So when on your exam, if they give you a situation like this, where they start the sentence off with one of these phrases, where somebody requests you to do something or wants you to do something or hopes that you do something or recommends or counsels you to do something, the secondary clause will be in the subjunctive. And they will tell you on your exam, either put it in the subjunctive or the present tense, but you got to read the sentence. If the first clause does not recommend, does not request you to do something, does not say they want you to do something, then you would just use the regular present tense, the present indicative tense. Okay. Um, in point 5, take a look at point 5. It's a little more picky, and we're not going to worry too much about this. But if a doctor tells you to do something and they're recommending you do it, so the doctor tells me to eat more vegetables, the second clause would be in the subjunctive. But if the doctor just makes a notation and says that I notice that people are eating, or the doctor says that people today are eating more vegetables, that secondary clause, he's not making a recommendation, he's just making an observation. And so you put that in the present tense. That's what they're showing you there. You're not going to get asked anything that difficult on your exam. But take a look at that. And if there are some actividades prácticas on page 373, please look through them. And so they want you, this is similar to like what your exam and some of your homework might be like. So it says, right, let's take a look at this one. On the top of page 373, actividades prácticas, number A, it says pensar or querer. Pensar means to think, I think or I believe, or querer. Querer is to want. It's a verb of want, desire, volition. So they want you to uh, choose pensar, pienso o quiero, and complete the sentence. So let's do it. So the first clause is pienso. Okay, I think. Your second clause is que yo pienso que Pepe and now está en el gimnasio. So I want to say I believe or I think Pepe is in the gym. So I will say pienso que Pepe está en el gimnasio. That's a thing that I think. So I conjugate the verb estar in the present indicative, just a pure present tense. I don't need the subjunctive. But what if I say, I want Pepe to be in the gym? Now it will be quiero que Pepe esté with an E ending en el gimnasio. Now I have to use the subjunctive because, again, I told you the subjunctive will be set up for your purposes. You'll have an introductory sentence or clause and then a secondary clause. And you have to decide that secondary clause, will it be in the present tense or the subjunctive? If the first clause is just a statement, the second part will just be the regular present tense. If the first clause, though, is a verb of volition, I hope, I want, I recommend, I counsel you to do something, your second clause will be in the subjunctive. Look, it's the next one. It's I believe or I want. Okay, what do you want? That Martina works in San Jose. So I believe that Martina works in San Jose would be pienso que Martina trabaja en San Jose. Simple present tense. It's a fact. I believe it. But what if I use this emotionally charged verb querer? Now, quiero que Martina trabaje. I use the subjunctive form. And remember, for AR verbs, subjunctive conjugations will be with E endings, trabaje. Okay. Um, so let's do the next one. Pienso and then que gane Nadal. So I believe that Nadal's winning. So it would be pienso que ga. So now in this one, pienso que gana, gana Nadal. I would put it in the present tense. Okay, they have it in the subjunctive. That's wrong. Pienso que gana. But what if I say quiero? Quiero que gane Nadal. That's correct. Okay. Now, likewise, I could say recomiendo que gane if I use recomendar. Okay. Or I could say ojalá, go back. Okay. Go back to this chart. And after these phrases, esperar, ojalá, pedir, querer, es necesario que, es importante que. After these, you're always in your secondary clause, you're going to use the subjunctive. If you have an AR verb, the endings will have E's in them. If you have an IR or an ER verb, the endings will have A's in them. So I could say, I want Pablo to eat more. Yo quiero que Pablo coma más because I want it. But I think he eats more. It would just be pienso que Pablo come más. So I'm not using one of these emotionally, subjectively charged words. So take a look at that. You will be tested on it. And I think that does it. The test in a few weeks, I think, is pretty straightforward, um, pretty easy, okay? Um, and you will have some readings and some listening sections, and you're going to have to answer some pretty simple questions, not a whole lot of writing on the Chapter 12 test. Thank you.